Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Tuesday. I hope you're having a good start to the week, wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. It's another big week in the world of Arsenal, isn't it? Arsenal versus Manchester United. Tomorrow, got them again in about a month's time as well, thanks to that FA Cup draw, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show. But we'll look ahead to tomorrow night's game. In today's show, Mikel Arteta is speaking a little bit later on today at London Colney in his pre-match press conference. We'll see what he has to say then. But ahead of that, we'll talk about the game, look at some of the big decisions facing him when it comes to his team selection, some of the big calls that he has got to make. We'll look at what Jorginho has been saying about Bukayo Saka potentially winning the Ballon d'Or. We will discuss that FA Cup draw. Got other comments from you guys as well to run over. So let's get going, shall we? And we'll crack on with tomorrow night's game. Huge game. They're all big games for Arsenal now, isn't it? Crucial in terms of trying to close this gap on Liverpool, who do have a tricky fixture this week away at Newcastle as well. Could that potentially be a moment where they could drop some points? Fingers crossed it is. We'll have to wait and see. But from Arsenal, as I've said time and time again now, it's just about winning. Do your job, win, and then see what happens at Liverpool. We can't do anything else than that. And it's a big game. It's Manchester United, always a big game at the Emirates. Yes, it doesn't quite have the rivalry that it once did in those wonderful years of the late 90s and the early noughties, where it was the title decided every single season. And I just had some of the greatest nights of my Arsenal supporting life, watching Arsenal beat that United team. Rivalry doesn't quite exist like that anymore, but it's still a big game, and it's a big game from Arsenal's point of view. And it's an interesting one in terms of what Mikel's going to do in terms of his team selection. I think he's got some pretty big calls. Obviously, we've got the doubts over some of the players. Thomas Partey, whether he'll make it. Ricardo Calafiori, whether he will make it as well. So there's some big calls to make in terms of injuries and if they're ready to come on, and do you risk them or not. But in terms of just players who aren't injured and who could potentially start this game, I think certainly that who starts on the left-hand side of the attack is going to be really interesting, what Mikel Arteta decides there. We've seen in the recent games, he seems to be chopping and changing a little bit. Against Nottingham Forest, Trossard started. Champions League, Martinelli came in and started. Against West Ham, Trossard came back in and Martinelli dropped out. So does that mean this week that it's Martinelli who comes back in? And when I look at Man United and how Arsenal might get at them, I do wonder if Martinelli might be the option for this game. And I do wonder if that was why Trossard started against West Ham, if Arteta is looking at these games sort of singly now in terms of how individuals can impact the game. Trossard, I thought, was very good against West Ham. You know, Trossard's been struggling this season in the build-up to international break, no doubt about it. And, you know, a lot of people were getting on Trossard's back in terms of his performances, which I did think there was certain mitigating circumstances for. You know, in the absence of Martin Odegaard, Trossard was being asked to do a job that he doesn't really do that often. Him and Havertz were kind of being run into the ground a little bit in the absence of Odegaard, and I think it maybe impacted both of their performances, not just Trossard's, even though it was Trossard who got sort of the main criticism in that period. But he definitely looked like a much more confident player since the international break. I thought he was good in that start he had against Nottingham Forest. Obviously scored when he came on in the Champions League, scored again at the weekend and made that goal for Kai Havertz as well. And he's just looking much more like the Trossard that we know since he arrived from Brighton. So do you reward him for that performance against West Ham by keeping him in the side against Manchester United? You know, logic says yes, because why would you take a player out when he's just had a very good performance? It almost feels like you're punishing him for a good performance. If you play well, you should keep your place in the team. But there's so many fixtures coming up. It's just non-stop now up until Christmas. So is rotation, which maybe we're seeing Mikel do a little bit more at the moment, is that the way to go? And is that why Martinelli didn't even come on against West Ham? You know, not even as a substitute. He didn't. He stayed sat on the bench. Was that just to make sure that he was fully charged and ready to go against Manchester United? Part of me was sitting there thinking that was the case. So I think it's a really big decision what Mikel's got to make there on the left-hand side. I think in midfield as well, it's like if Thomas Partey doesn't make it, you know, Jorginho surely starts again, was very, very good against West Ham. And then you just play Declan Rice and you play Martin Odegaard ahead of them. But, you know, we wait and see what happens with Mikel Merino as well. But even if Partey is fit, and I know Thomas Partey's been brilliant this season, but Jorginho was great against West Ham. Do you keep Jorginho in that team, or do you bring Thomas Partey straight back into that side? You know, it's another decision for Mikel to make. I would suggest he would probably bring Partey straight back into the side. because of the level of Partey's performances so far this season. But it is another decision for him to make as well. And if Calafiori doesn't make it, who do you play on the left-hand side of defence? Zinchenko, again, I thought was very good in his 2 substitute appearances this week. Very good against Sporting. I thought he was excellent in his cameo against West Ham as well. Do you bring him in and play him on the left-hand side? But then does that expose him potentially against the likes of Ahmad, who we've seen playing very, very well for United at the weekend against Everton? Potentially Rashford as well, who was playing on the sort of right-hand side of that 3-pronged attack under Amorim as well. So some big decisions for Mikel to make. Love to get your thoughts on it ahead of tomorrow's game. I can pull some of them together and get them included in tomorrow's preview show. Who would you be playing and where? Would you go Martinelli? Would you go Trossard? What would you do in midfield if Calafiori doesn't make it? Who goes at left back for you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This was the team, before we move on, this was the team that started against West Ham when I'm talking about the sort of decisions that Arteta's have to make there, and you look at it and you can see who's definitely going to start. We know that Raya will be in goal. We know if Gabriel's fit, it'll be Gabriel and Saliba. If Timber's fit, it'll be Timber at right back. Declan Rice and Odegaard are definitely going to play. Havertz and Saka are definitely going to play. So there's sort of question marks over who plays where. Definitely Calafiori in central midfield and Leandro Trossard. So yeah, interesting ones, I think. And I don't think we'll see it'll be that different to this game. Obviously, if Gabriel's fit and Calafiori's fit, I think they definitely start. But we'll wait and see if they are or not. Ruben Amorim's been speaking ahead of the game. Obviously, his first time in charge of a United team against Arsenal, not his first time in charge of Arsenal. Had a very good win at the Emirates. Well, it was a draw, but he won on penalty shootouts at the Emirates a couple of years ago with Sporting in the Europa League. Of course, he was asked if Arsenal's the biggest challenge he's faced yet since being at United. He said, yeah, it's the best team. It's the best team we've faced by far. But the test is every game. If you see the last game against Everton, it was really tough. It was 4-0. But you see the game like I see it. Every game now is a test without so many minutes to train, trying to manage the numbers of minutes. So many players. You cannot try to imagine one game. You have some players who might be out on the pitch in 60 minutes, 70 minutes. So it's really hard at the moment. Everything is a test. But Arsenal are... I know it's not easy for a United head coach to say. They're in a different point of their team. They are in a different moment. And yeah, I know that must be quite hard for a Man United coach to say, but it is just straight honest fact. When he was asked, how do you approach the game against United? He said, it's important to be brave. Sorry, game against Arsenal. He said, it's important to be brave. When I say brave, it's not pressing all the time higher. It's not all the same. You have to understand the moments of the game. We need to have the ball. That is a key point. We want to have the ball. We also want to dominate some moments of the game because we know that in these matches, it's hard to control all of it. If I have to say something, we have to be brave and we have to control the game. I'm intrigued to see how United approach this one under Amorim. They're obviously got, for the first time this season, got a nice little run going. Even before Amorim took charge, they were winning games under Van Nistelrooy. They've come back. They had a disappointing result, really, at Ipswich, first game under Amorim, but then they had a good win in the Europa League and had a good win against Everton at the weekend. I would like to see them attack Arsenal, I have to say. I think that would be a good thing for Arsenal if United come here and do try and be brave and do try and attack, because I think Arsenal would kind of relish that a little bit. I think United will be a threat. They'll definitely be a threat on the counter-attack. We've seen them be a threat against Arsenal before at the Emirates when they play that way. I think they will be again. But I still think if Arsenal play well, if they play to the level that we've seen in recent games, certainly in the first half against West Ham and against Sporting as well, just think Arsenal are too strong, as long as they take their chances, obviously, which is a big thing. You've got to take your chances in a game like this. But if they are, then I think Arsenal will be too strong for them. United have had a bit of a boost when it comes to sort of team news-wise ahead of the game. Lenny Yoro's in the squad for the first time for a competitive game anyway, for the first time since his move. I can't imagine he's going to come straight into the starting 11, although there is no Lisandro Martinez. He's suspended after getting a yellow card, his 5th yellow card of the season, so he's suspended and misses out. Kobe Mainoo misses out as well, same reason. He got booked against Everton. That was his 5th booking of the season. So United are without Martinez and Mainoo, and maybe Yoro will get a start in the absence of Martinez. We'll have to wait and see. I doubt it. Maguire did come back from injury in their game against Everton at the weekend as well. Luke Shaw's back as well, isn't he? He played against Everton. Fernandes was a bit of a doubt. He was seen with ice on his leg after the Everton win, but Amorim confirming in the press conference that Bruno Fernandes is fully fit to play. There looks like there's going to be no Johnny Evans or Victor Lindelof of those, so they've been out. So that's the latest team news at United ahead of Arsenal's game. We'll have to wait and see what Mikel Arteta says a little bit later on and see if he gives us any sort of indication on the injured players and whether they'll make it in time for tomorrow night's game. Continuing on with Manchester United, yeah, this wasn't very nice, was it? The FA Cup third round draw. I mean, it was a brilliant draw in terms of games. You've got a massive game in terms of all Premier League heavyweight clash in Arsenal Manchester United. You've got Man City versus Salford in terms of narrative. You've got Tamworth versus Spurs, Liverpool versus Accrington Stanley. So there's loads of narrative. It's actually a really good draw from that point of view. But from an Arsenal point of view, just the worst draw you can get, really. Sandwiched just in between Brighton away and the North London derby on the Wednesday night. You just wanted a nice game at home against a lower league team where you could rotate. But now, he's gonna have to go all guns blazing, Mikel Arteta, for this game if he wants to really have a crack at the FA Cup, which I would hope he does. There's just you're not going to be able to rotate. And I can imagine he was sitting there watching the draw last night and he just put his head in his hands when it came out. Not because he's scared of Man United, because I still think Arsenal should win this game. They're at home, obviously. Has to be won on the day as well. Now there's no replays, so it's got to be done and dusted on the day. He has to go to penalties. So I don't think he'd be disappointed in terms of being scared of playing Man United. It would just be the fact that he would have been looking at that weekend ahead of the Spurs game on the Wednesday night and looking at it thinking, just give us a nice draw so we can rotate and we can play some of the squad players and give them minutes. But now he's going to have a big decision to make over whether or not he puts the big guns in ahead of that Spurs game. You think Spurs have got are playing a non-league side at the weekend, so you'd imagine they'll be able to make changes for that game. And Liverpool had the perfect draw, didn't they? Liverpool at home to Accrington Stanley, Manchester City as well, home to Salford. Those are the sort of draws you really, really wanted. Unlike this one, Arsenal's last 3 draws in the FA Cup now. The last 3 teams they've drawn out in the FA Cup was Man City away, Liverpool last season at home, and now Man United. I mean, not getting much luck when it comes to that. A couple of you have been in touch. Ben says, hi, coming straight from the FA Cup draw. I know we've had decent draws in other cups, but the last few years in the FA Cup have been tough. We can do it, but it'll be hard work before the Christmas break. But it's after the Christmas break. It's January the 11th, I think, the weekend of the FA Cup. Femi says, Arsenal versus Man United, FA Cup third round. Can't wait. FA Cup third round has recently been throwing Arsenal some top games. Hopefully tomorrow can be a big win to put fear in the Manchester United heart. Yeah, hopefully Arsenal can lay down a bit of a marker against United ahead of that FA Cup game. So 2 games against United at the Emirates in the space of a few weeks, really. Hopefully 2 very good Arsenal wins. Right, moving on now. Got a question here from Joe. Says, have you seen Jorginho's interview backing Saka to win the Ballon d'Or someday? What do you think it would take? I think it'd have to be the assist record and Premier Champions League win for Arsenal with vital goals. Given there's no international tournament this year, for Harry Kane to jinx it possible, Odegaard or Saka could win it. Yeah, what do I think it would take? Definitely a Champions League win. I don't think a Premier League win would be enough to do it. It's very hard for a Premier League player to win the Ballon d'Or. Obviously, we've seen it with Rodri this season, but he didn't win it the year that he won the treble. When he scored the winner in the Champions League final. Messi won it. Obviously, it was a World Cup year that year. But it's very hard. I sat here and watched Thierry Henry do what Thierry Henry did season after season, and he never won the Ballon d'Or. It was a joke. It's just very hard for a player in the Premier League to win the award. So what would it take? I think you definitely need to win the Champions League and Saka to have a big say in that, maybe score in the final, score in the semi-final in some really big games, high-profile games. Maybe, if Arsenal won the double, won the Champions League and the Premier League, and Saka was the star of the show, then maybe it'd give themselves a chance in a year like this. But Jorginho's comments, if you haven't seen it, it was a good interview, actually. He did it with Rio Ferdinand on Rio's YouTube channel. He was, he said, he was asked whether he thought Saka was capable of winning Ballon d'Or, and he said, I believe so. Yes, I believe in him. I hope he believes himself as well. He said, for me now, the thing he needs to do more is his hunger to get into the box when he's on the weak side. Yes, I want to see him get more headers when crosses come in from the left. And it's an interesting point. I was talking about it yesterday, more in terms of Martinelli and how I'd like Martinelli to attack that back post more when Arsenal get in down the right-hand side. And I pointed out what Brennan Johnson's doing for Spurs this season. I think he's really taken that on board when, say, it's Werner or whoever it is, or Son over on that side. When he gets there, you see Brennan Johnson on the opposite flank making a real good run to that post all the time. His goal at the weekend against Fulham was just like that again. And I really want to see Martinelli doing that more. And I was sort of listening to Jorginho's interview and he said it. And I thought to myself, is that fair on Saka? And I think it probably is, Saka getting to the back post a little bit more. Arsenal, so many goals are scored. You think back to Raheem Sterling's unbelievable season for Man City when he scored 30 odd goals or whatever it was, 25 goals. So many of those were him getting into the back post and just getting himself tap-ins. Just that intent, that run. That's why I really like Martinelli's goal against Sporting when he got on the end of Timber's cross. He really he beat the fullback and got there for a tap-in. Those goals are so not easy to come by, but there's such a good route to scoring. And it would be good to see Arsenal players doing that more. So I thought it was quite interesting from Jorginho when he was talking about Bukayo Saka there. Here's one from Mito. Says, Liverpool still have some tough away games. That's the chance we need to take because we have pretty much done that, barring Anfield, the hardest away games. We need to be switched on fully and try to get back to keeping clean sheets. We tend to give teams a chance in away games through a lack of focus, whereas last season we never really had that issue. Yeah, I think that Arsenal definitely would like to get a few more clean sheets. We're seeing some sloppy goals given away. I look back to West Ham's first goal when it was 4-0 at the weekend as a prime example from that. Yeah, Liverpool got 2 tricky away games to come now, haven't they? They've got Newcastle this week. And then at the weekend, it's the Everton Merseyside derby at Goodison, which will be the last ever Merseyside derby in the league. Potentially the last ever Merseyside derby ever at Goodison, unless they draw each other in the cup. So, and Liverpool lost at Goodison convincingly last season, of course. I still look at it now, and I think Isak's going to be out for Newcastle tonight, isn't it? And Newcastle aren't in good form at the moment. They lost. They drew against Palace, but were awful against Palace at the weekend. And I kind of look at it and think, is that a Liverpool meeting them at a good time now? No Isak and everything like that. Is that another thing sort of falling Liverpool's way? Everton were a mess defensively against United at the weekend. So we'll wait and see. But there's certainly 2 fixtures you look at and hope that it might be a point where Liverpool drop points. We'll have to wait and see. But thinking if Arsenal don't win, it doesn't matter, does it? You know, if Liverpool go and lose to Newcastle, but Arsenal drop points against United, it doesn't matter. So that's why I keep saying it. Just got to focus on our results and winning them, and then we'll see what Liverpool do. There's no point looking too far ahead in the future of where Liverpool might drop points, because if Arsenal go and drop them themselves, it really doesn't matter. It's just about taking care of your own business when you're in a sort of position like this, when you're chasing. Polian says Arsenal could use Gabriel as a decoy now. Set pieces he's talking about. So many teams are going to move players towards them, taking them out of corners to open up options for others. And yeah, I mean, Arsenal got other players who are very good. And yeah, we've seen Havertz score from corners before. We've seen Saliba score from corners before. The one thing there is about teams are going to be focused more on Gabriel. I don't think it matters. They already are focused on Gabriel. They can't stop him. We've seen it. You know, West Ham were focused on him at the weekend. You saw Antonio was on him, absolutely on him, and they were talking to the referee. They were doing everything they could to make sure that they were covering what they thought Arsenal were going to do to get Gabriel in space. And they still couldn't stop it. Sporting were the same. Still just couldn't stop it. It's so hard to stop him. He just makes a run so well. He's so strong, so powerful. The deliveries are so good that I don't think it really matters that teams are going to be targeting him and sort of analysing what Arsenal are doing and trying to stop him, because I just think he'll win the header anyway as long as the delivery's good, because he's that good in the air. But I do agree, you know, maybe it'd be nice to see other people scoring from corners now, because we know that Saliba's very good in the air and can dominate from there. We know that Havertz is good in the air and can score from corners. So it'd be interesting if Arsenal do start doing something like that. We'll see on Wednesday night, won't we? Hopefully, maybe get another set piece masterpiece at the Emirates against Manchester United. And that's it from me today, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. As always, I do appreciate it. We'll wait and see what Mikel Arteta says a little bit later on today. Ahead of team news, I'll be back in the morning for the preview show. Like I said, you want to get involved in that in terms of what team selection you want to see. Let me know in the comments below in terms of what you think Arteta should do with some of those big decisions we discussed earlier on in today's show. Till then, everyone, have a great day. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.